Consciousness is a positive thing. That's true. As a consciousness developer, I could not think otherwise. However, believing anything to be only good, only luminous, is a very common 3D fantasy. Developing their consciousness is the key activity of those who want to develop psychologically or spiritually. Don't fool yourself though. Consciousness is a crime. Developing our consciousness is awesome because we find out new parts of ourselves, develop new abilities, enhance our performance, and have new life experiences. But consciousness also hurts. When we dive into ourselves, we discover beautiful things about us, but also some terrible things. The truth about ourselves is a hard thing to accept. It is hard to admit who we really are with all our good and all our evil. The first chapters of the Genesis, the first book of the Bible, tell us the story of Adam and Eve. When the story begins, Adam and Eve were unconscious and lived inside the paradise. When they eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, their eyes open. The tree of knowledge creates consciousness. However, it's important to know that God had forbidden them to eat the fruit of that particular tree. God had forbidden the access to knowledge. God had forbidden the access to consciousness. Consciousness is a crime to be punished with pain, with the expulsion of paradise. Aside from the pain we all face when exploring our inner world, consciousness development is highly criminalized and punished in our society. The more advanced someone is, the more they are considered to be immoral, judged, and criminalized. For instance, until the 19th century, chauvinism, slavery, and homophobia were very normal things. Much to the contrary, women and men being equals, black and white people being equally free, and sexual diversity were unacceptable things. The life of Christ, someone with a highly developed consciousness, shows that crystal clear. On Palm Sunday, Christ was acclaimed King in Jerusalem. On Good Friday, only 5 days later, everybody was against him and asking for his death. People chose the murderer Barabbas over Christ to be forgiven and freed. Apparently, consciousness is a crime worse than murder. The biggest consciousness leaps are the leaps from one dimension to the next one. Therefore, these are considered to be the biggest crimes possible. On the first dimension, there is no consciousness, so it is impossible to criminalize anyone. Consciousness comes to be at the entrance of the second dimension. In 2D, people have sort of a collective consciousness. The goal is to create a community and later a society. In 2D, the society is above everything, above people, individual differences, and freedom. Life is about playing your role in society. In the third dimension, the collective consciousness becomes individual. Being an individual, having an ego, and being free to make decisions become more important than sticking to your role in society. Therefore, 3D people rebel against social obligation. However, 2D people stick to their social roles and do not admit that 3D people want to be individuals. 2D people think that 3D people threaten the society. From a 2D perspective, the 3D consciousness is a crime. Currently, almost everybody is 3D. In 3D, the ego is above everything. The I is the sovereign. The society is a minor thing. The inner world is a minor thing. No one really knows what the soul is. In the fourth dimension, the soul reveals itself, and its strength is infinitely larger than the consciousness of the ego. 4D people prefer to let the soul's will be done, the divine will be done, not theirs. They do that even when the soul's will is something that the society considers to be evil and forbidden. 4D people surrender themselves to the soul, unite themselves with their souls. 4D people know they are sons and daughters of God. But 3D people stick to their egos and do not accept that someone does not abide by morals. They think that someone being united with the soul, with the divine, is an impossible thing. From a 3D perspective, a 4D consciousness is a crime. That's why Christ was crucified. Our 3D society, a society that seems to be going back to being 2D, would crucify Christ again, for sure. In 4D, the soul is the sovereign. Transcendence is above everything else. It is not allowed to make any decisions without consulting the soul. The entrance to the fifth dimension is the resurrection on Easter Sunday. The spirit reveals itself, but the spirit is not like the soul. The spirit does not direct the spiritual development. The spirit offers all possible ways, including the evil ones. 5D people choose for themselves in accordance with what makes sense to themselves. But 4D people stick to obeying the soul, following its directions. How can someone dare to choose for themselves in accordance with what makes sense for themselves without obeying the transcendence? How can someone dare to do works greater than those of Christ Himself? From a 4D perspective, a 5D consciousness is